Ding, ding, ding. Hi.
There we go. We are live, and
Hi.
it is 10 o'clock. So that's all good. It means that I can tell the time, which is good. So
That is always good. Do you remember that one time when when we had the time mishap, and I was like, "Hey, you coming?" And it's like, "Oh, it's another hour from now."
Oh, hey, we must be getting fairly close to that time again soon. We'll have that again.
Yeah, we got to worry about that.
I do have form when it comes to this. So
how about that story tonight?
It's got to be a good one.
8 billion people. My goodness.
A lot of people. I mean, considering I work in human factors and everything, which is clearly all about people, I'm not a very sociable guy. So big sort of.
Isn't that odd?
You know, well, we talk about like going to London and places like that, and I'm just like, it takes me a lot to go to big cities and things like that because it's full of people and like people being rude and knocking into you and all that sort of stuff. So yes,
depends on the city.
Possibly.
It does. It does. There's like, at least here in the States, it definitely depends on the city. There are certain cities that have sort of a collective attitude, demeanor. Demeanor is a better word.
Yeah.
Some cities are very friendly, and some are like, oh, well, stay away from that one.
Yeah, no, I think that's quite true over here as well. I think London is almost like, I almost feel like London is almost like a country in its own right because it's so multicultural. It's so got so many different people there that it almost feels like just a very different place when you go to it. And it's because I'm just not used to going there. I mean, I think if you grow up and live in London, people who grow up and live in London absolutely love the place and don't ever want to leave. Generalizing wildly, but the I think it's just I'm more of a country bumpkin. I like open fields and green pastures. So
yes, we are suburbia. So like we enjoy the comfort of being close enough to a city, but still sort of want our own privacy and space, because otherwise it's like things get too crowded when you try to go to a store, and it's just like it gets to be unmanageable at some point.
Have I not closed up? Oh, rookie error! I haven't closed off my
rookie.
My calendar. Shut the calendar down. There we go, and we can also shut Teams down. Teams go away.
Oh yeah, I should probably shut some stuff down too. Hold on.
What else have I got? Discord can go over here. I'm just not quite as prepared today as I usually am. Do I sound quiet to you?
No, you sound fine.
Maybe it's just. Oh, maybe I just need to turn up my headphones. If I turn my headphones down, that better. Oh, okay. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, might be the headphone thing.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, geez, Louise, what's going on here?
So, in terms of notes, we've got some social thoughts as well because we've had.
I saw that. I was just checking my end. I didn't see anything. Actually, I still need to check.
I haven't checked LinkedIn actually, but can't spell LinkedIn today. You know, I'm quite liking doing it this way, sort of like doing it and then just sort of reaching out to a few people who think might reply. So, and it seems to be working, so I'm quite pleased with that. Right.
Let's see.
Lots of people liking, nobody answering it. LinkedIn, you need to do better.
I know. Or is it on us that we need to be more engaging? I don't know.
Well, we're getting people who give us a thumbs up, which is brilliant in terms of, so they're reading it and thinking it's a good thing. In fact, Steph Cormack, who commented, she was also really she commented that she was really impressed with the broad range of topics or the good range of topics that we put on. Well, she actually said that the good range of topics that I choose now, and I had to sort of admit that it's got nothing to do with me.
With, you know what?
Uh,
Honestly, we don't choose those, so
but no,
thank
that's
you
cool.
for. We'll pass it along to our patrons.
Yeah, yes, I did. Well, hopefully, maybe I subtly encouraged them to be patrons, so they could actually help choose the news.
Oh, yeah. That thank you. That is a good call. Hang on, let's see here. I am having a hard time finding where I have posted calls to action. Let's see here. I feel like I don't know how to do this. I feel like I feel like somebody in the aging population who doesn't quite get how to.
What is it you're trying to do, Nick?
Interpret.
Well,
I'm trying to get to the results of a thing. Anyway, that's okay. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter for today. It doesn't matter because it wasn't a free input. It was a slider.
Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah. So, anyway, I hope everybody is doing well. We are doing okay over here. I think Barry and I had a little check-in beforehand, and our little shorthand 15-minute therapy session. And now we're continuing that therapy session publicly. And
it's the best way to do it. Just get it all out in the open.
Exactly. Exactly. You get it. All right. So I've lost you in some way, shape, or form. There we go. These multiple desktops.
Oh, I see. I thought maybe I just ran off or something.
No, you're fine. It's me.
I need to look at it came from because I haven't read them this week.
Yeah, we actually have some it came froms that I didn't have to like pull manually. They're the automation's working again, so it's actually really nice. And I am going to I'm actually going to tidy some of these up because I find that these are most engaged on social platforms. So I have answers to these.
Cool. Yeah, okay.
So I'm going to tighten these up, and if you're watching, listening, or I don't
whatever
know, experiencing this in an immersive virtual reality exhibit 300 years from now.
Could you imagine us doing some sort of virtual show of this, where maybe we sat in a virtual landscape, maybe sat on toadstools or something whilst delivering this?
I thought about it. My desk is way too messy for me to feel comfortable putting a camera right here for somebody to sit in my office with.
I've got no idea how that would work. So I would actually.
Well, we'd put a 360-degree camera, and I would imagine that if we so here's a way it could work, right? We both have 360-degree cameras in our spaces.
Yeah.
And in some way, we have them stitched. So maybe I have mine right here, and you have yours right there.
Yeah.
And if they were to look around in that physical space, they would see my setup if they looked this way from over here, right? And if they looked that way, they would see you and your setup. And then we stitch everything together so that way it's like almost as if we're side by side. It's just like one half you're looking at your end and the other half you're looking at my end. Looks like it's one big room. We just have to figure out the stitching in front, and maybe it's just a blend.
Wouldn't it be easy to almost take a Second Life approach? Or at least
we could do it that way too.
An Avatar approach. Technologically, it might be slightly less challenging.
No, it would be. Well, I think the solution that I proposed would probably be less challenging than as long as we got the same model, we got the same feed, and we just mixed those feeds somehow. I don't know. It could be.
We need to have a chat with So friend of my friend of the podcast, Professor Bob Stone, he's really into all of the VR, AR, and all that type of thing. Maybe I could ask him for some advice on how we could do it, because that could be fun. In a different way to do it. And in fact, he said he would do a follow-up interview with me as well around the application and the real application of human factors to virtual reality, which is really interesting.
What I went to school for.
There we go. But Bob's quite funny on LinkedIn and things, because he doesn't hold back. He just says exactly what he thinks, and normally it's brutal. So you'll get a company saying, "Look at us, we're just doing this in virtual reality, and it's going to save the world." And Bob will turn around and say, "Look, I was doing that like 25 years ago, and the way you've done it is really rubbish." And he just cuts people dead. He's brutal, but the problem is he's right. Because he's sort of come to that retirement age, that he doesn't need to please anybody. He just needs to say what he thinks. Right. I'm just going to quickly check over the blurb for big words that I can't pronounce.
Oh yeah, do that.
You always throw a few with.
I like to throw those in there.
Yeah, I'm going to rewrite that bit. That's got lots of words.
It's funny because I don't know these songs. These songs are provided to us by our streaming software, and I have now become familiar enough with them that I can recognize them when we've heard them before. Yeah, because we always use the same ones. Should we switch it up tonight? I think like we can definitely do. We can do a different type of music. We can.
But what type of music is this? Is this just chill?
This is chill.
Okay.
We can do future pop, ambient, chill hop, lo-fi, hip hop, lounge, down tempo, or chill. What are you thinking?
Let's do some upbeat pop thing.
Future pop.
Future pop. There we go.
All right, let's do future pop. This seems like a little too bright for.
I was going to say this is something I expect to see on the breakfast news, or here on the breakfast news.
This feels very upbeat for for the tone of the show.
Yes, we don't want to be too motivated or anything like that. That'd just be weird.
There is an option to shuffle, so maybe it's just this one. Let's try another one. I'm gonna pump up the volume here a little bit. Still not.
Yeah, I think future pop was a mistake. What were the other options?
Hang on. This one's not bad.
Yeah. Oh, like that.
Yeah, that's all right. All right, let's try another one. So the choices again were aside from chill and future pop, we got ambient, chill hop, lo-fi, hip hop, lounge, or down tempo.
I'm intrigued by what lo-fi is.
All right, let's throw lo-fi up. Let's hit this lo-fi.
That feels very post-show music. Right, we need to get down and
relax.
And
meditation.
Yes.
I mean, lo-fi. There's a bunch of channels on YouTube, lo-fi tunes to whatever to, right? Like study and relax to, or talk human factors to. Let's shuffle. Let's see what else. It's too relaxed. It's putting me to sleep. I think.
we need something to start. We need something pre-show that works us into the show.
All right.
After something to bring us out of the show.
Let's try Chill Hop.
Okay, let's go with that.
Put me to sleep again. Hang on. Yeah, it's putting me to sleep. Let's try another one. Let's try. All right, we're gonna go into hip hop now. This is hip hop. This is upbeat. All right.
That's all right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay. Let's shuffle it and see. Yeah, this is all right.
Yeah, no, we'll go with that.
All right, let's go with hip hop for a while. We're gonna go with hip hop for a while. There we go. So yeah, I am going through and I'm looking at the It Came Froms. I'm tidying them up a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's. Because I do notice when I'm starting to go through like sort of Instagram and stuff now, I'm starting to see me a lot more, which is a bit weird.
Oh, yeah, we've been putting a lot out more on our socials.
Yeah,
it's kind of weird because I get it in my feed too. It's like,
yeah.
Oh, right, and I see like I do all that stuff after the show on Thursdays, and so I forget about it, and it just happens. Like they all just go out, and I'm like, oh yeah, we talked about that, and it's kind of cool because it brings me back to the conversation that we had like the previous week, and I'm like, yeah, we did have a good conversation about that. That was a good talk, right? And I think I mentioned this on the show. It like actually forces me, no matter how the production of the show has gone, so whether or not internet connectivity is down or whatever, it forces me to find the good in every episode. It forces me to find at least 7 things, one for each day of the week, and it's a good exercise to make me feel better about the stuff that we produce, right? Because we're our own strongest critics.
Yes.
And there's certain episodes that you and I feel stronger about than others. Like that it was a good performance or that it was a good discussion or anything like that. And this challenges me on a lot of that because it forces me to look beyond how we felt about it and pick out some of those good pieces of it that we can then, slice up and give back to the community in different ways that are useful. Because a lot of the stuff that we talk about, a lot of stuff that we put out there is like it came from stuff or, some fun things that you blink and you miss it type of thing on the show, right?
Yeah. So, no, it's good. You're right. It's the and also it's making what we've done just that little bit more accessible because people are listening in different ways now. And I need to keep on top of that, which is really neat.
Yeah.
So.
All right. I think the first question has been truncated enough. What are time? Time we have.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
20 minutes.
All right.
Oh no! Don't do that.
Let's see here.
Oh, wrong one. Where's done? Oh, that's what. Oh no, Barry. Oh. I don't need that. Now I do need that. That's that. If anybody is listening, please do say hi before we go live. About 10 minutes to say hi. So
10 minutes to say hi.
Yeah. Okay.
And make
that's fine.
And make your comments on the world hitting 8 billion population and what that means for human factors. By the way, I have to share this because here in the States, something was announced today that I am super jazzed about. We actually shared this on our Twitter earlier. I actually retweeted. I very seldom retweet things or am seldom active on my personal Twitter. But this was too good not to share. And so basically what has happened today is the White House has announced that any scientific research done here in the States that has been funded by the federal government needs to be accessible without delay starting in 2026. So that means that freely to the public. That means that journals can no longer price gouge on at least some articles. And this is very significant because a lot of research done here in the States, has some government funding. And so this is going to fundamentally change how we share research and information across all fields.
That is really cool, because I've always wondered or thought, because we spend a lot of time publishing stuff, and all that. I've always been amused by the fact that we're the ones who produce research papers. So then we publish it. We promote it to a conference and say, look, please review. So you're volunteering your own work. The people who are reviewing the work generally are volunteers as well, and so the only people who truly make money out of this are the publishers. And yet you get nothing out of it for putting all that effort in. So, I've wondered a lot about that model, and whether we, why do we kowtow to it so much? So that would be really good. I wonder how that deals with national security. So, defense research, for example, some that we might not want published. But I'm sure that they're a bit like what we have at the moment.
Let me read the statement, because there's defense research, I feel like, is different from grants, right, that go to schools and stuff. So let me read the actual statement here. Let's see, where's where did I do that thing? It's around here somewhere. Let me look. Someone else must be on the Twitter too, because they just retweeted that a thing about us picking good stories. Let's see. So here's the announcement. Today, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy updated U.S. policy guidance to make the results of taxpayer-supported research immediately available to the American public at no cost. In a memorandum to federal departments and agencies, Dr. Alondra Nelson, the head of OSTP, delivered guidance for agencies to update their public access policies as soon as possible to make publications and research funded by taxpayers publicly accessible without an embargo or cost. All agencies will fully implement updated policies, including ending the optional 12-month embargo no later than December 31st, 2025. So basically, this is saying that journals can't have some sort of embargo that prevents the sharing of information. Like, sometimes there's embargoes with research that say you can't distribute this publicly. Like, you can't put it on your website. You can't send it to anybody if they ask you for it. No more. If it's federally funded or taxpayer funded. And so defense is taxpayer funded. But I think, there's obviously some classification issues with that.
With all these things, I mean, the details like that are minimal, aren't they? They'll come up with a solution really quickly. It won't be a drama.
Oh yeah.
But it's I think it's really good, because I've often thought that what is it that these publishing companies actually get? Because who actually sits there and reads like a book cover to cover, a set of proceedings, for example? People used to, but you don't research in the same way anymore. So ResearchGate and other things like that make things available freely, much more useful on Google Scholar and other types of things.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a huge win. I just wanted to share that with
It is very good you win. So that means we're going to have loads and loads and loads of stories to choose from then, because we'll have data and research coming out of every orifice nearly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the velocity of research will well, let me put it this way. The way in which we research will fundamentally shift, because now you won't have sort of this. It'll be more freely available to do some of the research, and that knowledge will become freely available sooner. And so the velocity of research and iteration on these research on this research will change dramatically as this science becomes available. And I'm thinking about it from a human factors perspective, but this is all over, right? This is science, technology. This is like the latest microchip development. How can we get that out there? And the latest machine learning algorithms or best practices.
COVID was largely a really good example of what can happen when actually everybody puts their head together. Don't worry about boundaries. We got to a vaccine in record time. In fact, we got there so quickly that people assumed that it was fake, or that I think what got me with that was like people assumed, well, of course we'll get a really quick vaccine because science, and we almost forget how difficult this stuff is because it was so focused and there were so many people focused around it delivering. And so if we can get that on all subjects, then that'll be amazing.
Yeah, and I will add one additional piece here, and I think this is largely due to some of the policy that we have passed here in the States over the last couple of weeks, where we've had the Inflation Reduction Act, which has the largest sweeping climate change provisions in history. And a lot of that is like carrots at the end of the stick. That was actually one of the other stories that could have been talked about on tonight's show. It has a bunch of carrots at the end of sticks for companies to basically create better technologies for renewable energy. It has, carrots at the end of sticks for companies to develop transportation solutions that use electric energy. And so thinking about all of that, it would make sense for us to lift some of those. And the CHIPS Act. The CHIPS Act was passed here to sort of help semiconductor fabrication and research and development here in the States to be domestic rather than relying on imports from overseas. And so all this stuff, to me, says, yeah, we're gearing up to do a lot here in the States, and we're going to need science that we are producing here in the States to be freely available, so that way we can operate at a velocity that allows us to outpace other markets. Very, very strategic and wonderful, and I love to see it. It's wonderful.
It's getting that right mix, isn't it, between the whole because we've got similar sort of. I was going to say we've got similar sort of issues, but different issues here in the UK, where we've got a government that is more inward fearing, and really, it could be argued not placing the best strategic work around research and things like that. But it's kind of getting that. I sort of certainly worried historically that we were getting so insular that we were forgetting about cooperation. But I think that's regressing now, and we're starting to cooperate again. So we shall see.
All right. Well, we're almost at time. We almost have to start this show, Barry. Are you ready to go?
I thought you were about to say we're time. That's us done. We're going to go to bed.
No, that was just a show. We're going to talk about science being freely available. Although that would be a nice little snippet. I'm wondering if we make that available. Although we have music in the background, so I'm not sure how that would work. Our patrons will hear it.
But that's fine. The music is freely available music, isn't it?
It is. It's the problem is that if you're listening to audio, solely audio, I'm thinking about like repackaging this as solely audio, that becomes a little more. It just becomes extra noise that you.
Yeah.
It does nothing to add to the conversation. It distracts, is what I'm from the content.
Yes.
But when we're just chilling, hanging out here.
Exactly. I mean, you never know what pearls of wisdom we come out with, how we could possibly be saving the earth, and you're going to throw it all away just for a little bit of music.
I'm not going to throw it away. Anyone who's here watching, anyone who goes back and watches later is going to see this. They're going to hear this. Our patrons are going to hear this.
That's true.
All right. All right. So we are going to take a quickish break, and then we will be back to talk about some fun stuff. Barry, if at any point my feed goes bye-bye, just let me know and we'll retake, because I find that doing retakes in the moment are much easier to fix than trying to go back and splice it in or anything like that.
I find it more fun in letting you go back and do all that stuff.
Yeah, no, I spend enough time doing this show anyway. All right.
No, that's fair.
We'll be right back. We'll start the show. Stick around. Back in a minute.
Welcome to Human Factors Cast, your weekly podcast for human factors, psychology, and design.
Oh, I didn't kill the music. All right.
Start as you mean to go on.
Okay, yep. We'll do it again. All right. Give it a pause. August 25th. That is the date. This is episode 256. I'm doing things a little bit different. I don't know. This is.
Oh, and now you paused. That's absolute genius.
Wow. All right. You know what? We're just going to take a pause because this is right at the top of the show. This is why you come to these things. Is because you come to NASCAR for the crashes, not the race. So am I okay now?
Yes, you're okay now. So take a pause. Start again.
All right. You know what? Hang on. We're just going to, so I can find it later. I'm just going to do this again.
Welcome to Human Factors Cast, your weekly podcast for human factors, psychology, and design.
Take two. This is episode 256. We're recording this live on August 25th, 2022. This is Human Factors Cast. I'm your host, Nick Roome. I'm joined today by the wonderful Mr. Barry Kirby.
Hey, how are you doing?
Hey, I am well. This is our second take of the intro, and is it going okay?
It's great. I'm loving it. I'm just terrified in case I say anything out of place and you have to do it again.
All right, leave it in. All right, we got a great show for y'all tonight. We're going to be talking about how world population is going to surpass the 8 billion threshold very soon. And later, we're going to answer some questions from the community about following UX guides or carving your own path, networking to get ahead in your career, and making assumptions on users. But first, we have some programming notes or community update here. Barry, I have to know, what is the latest over at 1202?
Well, in 1202, people have been inspired by Bob Bridger and his insights into human factors books. As an author, he's written a whole bunch of human factors books, and he's given us his insights on why to write them in the first place. And if you're using a publisher, how does that work? But also, what happens when you self-publish, and what does that do for you? He gives us some really good insights into all of them processes, the fun around writing them, why you did it in the first place, but also if you're a budding author, then some of the pitfalls to avoid. But on Monday, we have a new discussion going live, and that's with Susie Broadbent. And Susie is a fellow of the CIHF and delivered this year's Institute lecture at EHF 2022. She talks with experience and passion about the practicalities of implementing good human factors practice, and really around where we have to make real life judgments about adopting the book methodology to applying that to real world conditions. And so it's the real practical aspects of applying human factors. So that goes live on Monday, and hopefully everybody will learn something new.
Was Susie the one who caused a stir?
That's our Susie, yes.
I'm looking forward to that one. All right, well, we know why you're here. Let's get into the news. Yes, this is the wonderful part of the show, all about human factors news, where our listeners and patrons choose the story. Barry, what is the story this week?
So the story this week is the world population is going to hit 8 billion, any day now. The global population is set to hit 8 billion people by November the 15th, 2022, according to the United Nations' latest population projections. The report also predicts 8.5 billion people by 2030, 9.7 billion by 2050, and 10.4 billion in 2100. Or in simple terms, a rapid slowdown in the explosive growth we've been seeing over the past century or so. Though we've known the population was going to hit this number since July of this year, the Wall Street Journal pointed out today that it's now essentially imminent, with it now being possible that the world will hit this giant round number any day now. Although the UN thinks we'll eventually cross the 10 billion mark, the WSJ argues that may not actually be the case. It's predicted that the education and increasing quality of life could actually drastically slow global fertility. There are really two big questions, they point out. Firstly, how rapid fertility will decline in Africa. And the other question is China and countries with very low fertility, if they will actually recover and how fast they will recover. As the population grows, it'll cause significant pain points. The most alarming might be the population bomb already being felt in some parts of the world, caused by a rapid aging cohort without enough youngsters left over to care for them. The total population in the end is a meaningless number. It depends on what these people are able to do and what their skills are, and whether actually they've got enough to eat. So, Nick, what are your thoughts on having more and more neighbors on our little space rock?
Oh, that's a great way to put it. That is a lot of people. 8 billion. Where did I get
Mhm.
3? 8 billion people is a lot of people. And as somebody who works with people, for people, that gives me a good sense of job security. But beyond that, these are really interesting numbers here. And there's they mentioned this rapid slowdown, and in the report, they actually project that there could be a decline in population in some models at the extreme ends. And so maybe we can talk a little bit about through that issue a little bit later. But I'm curious about what your initial reaction to all this was.
So I still can't help feeling that yes, there is becoming more and more of us, but there's still loads of space in the world for people to inhabit. But we do have a habit now of wanting to mainly cluster around certain areas. So your big city populations are largely getting denser and denser, rather than us spilling out into broader green pastures, as it were. I'm also not entirely convinced, and this sounds a horrible thing to say, but can we be nice enough to each other when there are more people around us? There's given the volatility of different people, different countries, etc., etc. I do wonder that the more people you have, does the worse actually our global relationships? How are they going to survive, and will they thrive or will they decline? But actually, as you mentioned, outside the headline of this 8 billion number, the article did say that that there is a slowdown in that growth, which I think I think is a good thing. But it's interesting that this article automatically ran into, well, how are these younger people, or there's not enough younger people to care for older people? How are we going to feed each other, etc., etc. Which is almost, I kind of feeling, a very selfish attitude to where we're at now, as opposed to where we potentially need to be. But I think we could dig into some of this, and I think there's a lot of meat here for us to get stuck into.
Yeah, and I think so. Barry put out the call on social media for others to comment on this, and I think this first one actually goes very well with some of the points that you were making here. This is from Peter Williams, and they wrote, "Timely tweet. Given I'm surrounded by farmers at the moment with 84 million extra mouths to feed each year, according to the UN, the world of Internet of Things and satellite Internet of Things will no doubt provide efficiency gains, better data, and digital know-how for farmers to exploit and export globally." So do we want to talk about the farming aspect of this and how this might be sort of one good way in which we can use technology to leverage it for our benefit as a global society?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, there's so much around our basic need. So we know what when you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs and things like that, whether you agree with that or not. But the fundamental, we all need to be fed. We all need to have that basic food security, and the main people who provide that are farmers, obviously. But it also then, so they need to generate crops. They need to generate food for the world. So if you look at it at a world scale, the greater, so agri-tech and the technology to allow them to be more efficient, to be able to understand the whole nature of what it is that they're doing, from how effective their soil is, to the water levels, water pollution, or just the nutrients within the soil and the water, and how that's all working. It means they can be massively efficient. But then it also leads into logistics as well, because if we can use technology to have better logistics, it means we can get the food where it needs to go at the right time. Because at the moment, we still live in a world where we are throwing so much waste away, that at all parts of the food production and sales element, that surely we should be able to utilize technology to make the delivery of food more efficient. So we're actually getting fresher food quicker, and reducing waste. Now, I know you know more about the logistic side of things than I do. Do you have any sort of insights around that type of thing?
We still have a long way to go. Yes, that's my insight. We,
Fair enough.
but that's a good thing, right? Because we're thinking about these problems now, and I almost want to take a step back and look at sort of the key messages that are coming out of this UN report. And I've pulled these out. I'm going to read through them, and maybe we can dig into ones that we find are interesting. So I'm going to read these kind of verbatim as they have them in the report. And these are high level sort of messages. They have a bunch of other bullet points that are supporting evidence. We're just going to go through the high level evidence, because otherwise we'd be here for the entire hour reading out those bullet points. So the first one here is: the world population continues to grow, but pace of growth is slowing down. So that's kind of the first high level point.
Yeah.
The next one: rates of population growth vary significantly across countries and regions. The next point is: levels and patterns of fertility and mortality vary widely around the world. The next point is: the population of older persons is increasing, both in numbers and as a share of the total
So
population. Yeah.
So just before you crack on that, and I think this is what is getting people concerned and worried, isn't it? Is the fact that we are living longer, but as we getting, it's not like we are the majority of us are living longer and staying completely fit and healthy. We sort of hit the majority of people will hit an age where they need more support, etc., etc., and that's where I think, certainly out of the article, there was them highlighted bits around, okay, we've got this older population, who's going to look after them, who's going to basically look after me, in my old age. This is almost where we step up with the technology. We've talked a lot in a lot of previous episodes about how technology can support people. So people to be more independent in their own home, the use of wearables to understand your own physical and mental well-being, and things like that. So is this something that we need to be concerned about? And also, is this only a point in time? Because actually, if the population density is tailing off, and we might see a population decrease, overall, it's because we'll get through. It's almost the baby boomer blip, isn't it? That things might come down. So some of this feels almost, it's not a selfish point, but it is a very moment in time point. Now that moment in time might last 5 or 10 years, but when you look at the overall expectancy, I'm not sure whether that is where the focus needs to be.
Yeah, I mean, that is what we're trying to focus on now, because that is where we're at now. You're right. There's this makeup of different populations and age of populations will change over time. And especially as sort of this growth is decreasing, you're going to have less in that group as the mortality rate either increases or slows down depending on global circumstances, right? We saw a huge mortality rate increase during the pandemic. So those are types of things where we can't predict that, but we are seeing this slowdown of growth where the curve is kind of flattening out, which is really interesting. And it's not somewhere that we've been, at least since we tracked, able to see.
Since records began.
Yeah, exactly. So you're right. This is a unique issue where we need to design for that population, but then we also need to consider everyone else that comes after And you're right. We did talk a lot about this in other episodes, and robots is the answer. Go listen to that episode if you want.
Really?
But no, they're not the answer. But the answer is to sort of think about where the population's at now, what digital nativity means for future generations, and how do we design for those countries and cultures who are not digital natives yet?
Mm-hmm.
That's another question, right?
Because that is almost like with a couple of the other points that you highlighted there, the fact that rates of population vary significantly across countries and regions, and so you've got booms in different areas happening all the time, and also the fertility and mortality vary around the world as well. Are we almost at that piece now where actually the world is almost doing that bigger Mother Nature thing of self-limiting? In doing them things that is way beyond our comprehension as such, which it could be. It's interesting to see whether the world can self-regulate in that way, and just how we deal with that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to get back to this list of key messages here. The next, I guess, we have 6 more or something like that. The next point here is a sustained drop in fertility leads to an increased concentration of the population at working ages, creating an opportunity for accelerated economic growth per capita. We can get back to that one. The next point here is more and more countries have begun to experience population decline. We already talked about that a little bit. Next point is international migration is having important impacts on population trends for some countries. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected all components of population change, including fertility and mortality. We talked a little bit about that. And then the last point that they make is population data provide critical information for use in development planning. And so why do we look at population? Well, it's exactly for that reason. We can start to understand what is happening around us and try to match our approach to better plan for what we suspect is going to happen. So those are the messages. Barry, really, we could go anywhere from here. Where do you want to jump in?
So I think the first bit I quite like the thought of is it's almost continuing that argument about understanding what does this slowdown mean, because I think it's quite interesting already that we've rather than pick up on the 8 billion number, we're actually more concerned about the what happens after that. But where we talked about how to care for the elder generation, there was also a lot of discussion around what is the economic impact. So if you've got less people working, or if you've got a lot of people, we've already living in a world where there is less jobs available. The traditional jobs of mining, the traditional factory type work is now being replaced by automation in maybe not in the big way that a lot of people think, but actually there is a lot more automation going on. There's less people working on production lines. So actually, if we do have this population decrease, we're not going to necessarily reduce the number of jobs available because they're already reducing. It's more that actually maybe the population is now suiting the number of jobs available, which is potential. But where do you think these future jobs are going to go? Do you think they will disappear, or do you think they will just change into something else?
I think you should read that other social thought.
Okay, let me just scroll back up to the social thought. I've lost. Okay, so Steph Cormack, who was also on provided a social thought for the last episode. Her response was, "Oh, that's a lot to think about. From automation, influence of AI, aging population, social care to design issues. With my paramedic background, health and social care are big issues. IT for patient tracking, flow and support with clinician decision making, maybe as a broad start."
So I want to comment on this. Because you started to bring up automation, and with this population decline, I want to tie this social thought into that thread, because both you and Steph are right. There is this population decline, and so if you think about that, there's going to be all these jobs and roles in which we perform in society that are no longer going to be fulfilled once the population declines to a certain point, and perhaps even reverses from that high level number, right? Not necessarily talking about the growth declining, but the population actually declining, which is an option. In the report, there are projections in which there could be a population decline by the year, I don't know, it was like 2050 or 2100. We're talking about long spans of time, but it's important to think about, especially when some of these roles may not be fulfilled if you do have a population decline. I'm looking through the report right now to see where that projection was, because it's definitely an interesting one. If you are following along with the report, I am looking at page 27. The bottom of that, there's sort of a projection where at the bottom end, and actually in half the cases, population does decline, and you have sort of this convergence of births and deaths each year that would indicate that there are more people being taken out of this world than being put into this world. That's a really grim way to think about it. But let's think about what that means for human factors. So this has massive implications for things like human, AI, robot teaming, when we are going to need to sort of design systems to take care of some of those tasks that are currently being occupied by human operators, right? And so if you think about sort of making, I don't know, we're already seeing this here in the States, and this is a very high tech example. And I'm sorry, but this is like just the one at the top of my head. We're seeing bots that are flipping burgers, right? And I mean, we even talked about this in a previous episode. We're seeing bots that are flipping burgers, and that's to take care of a position that here in the States, we're seeing a population decline with a lot of more people deciding that they do not want children. And, you're not having as much, we are a low fertility country is how this, this report would put it. And so because of that, we're not having enough people to replace the jobs that we had before. And so we're building robots to do those things. And we need to figure out how to interact with those robots. And we need to figure out where those robots make sense to put in for those types of roles and where they don't make sense. Are you going to have a robot surgeon? See last week, I think there's
I would challenge you slightly.
Okay.
Here we go. Let's have a slight disagreement. It's not really a big disagreement, but you sort of made the assumption there that we are making robots to flip burgers because there is no people to flip the burgers. But is it not?
No, there's more to it than that.
No, there is, but fundamentally, we're making robots flip the burgers, do the surgery, etc., because we can, and we're finding that we can get technology to do these things, and the knock-on effect of that is actually we don't need to employ people to flip the burgers because we can get a robot to do it for us, or be the checkout operator, or be the etc. All of the examples are there, and so that's why I think I guess it's fairly easy for us to say at this point in time, I'm fairly relaxed about population decrease, because a natural population decrease, not in any sort of other weird way. In terms of this, because that takes it to a whole different conversation.
Getting dark there, Barry.
No, you know what I mean? We've already got we a lot of the arguments that we've got around a lack of automation at the moment is around the fact that it takes away jobs. And so we've got lots of campaigns in the UK at the moment. So I don't know what it's like in the States, but in the UK there's already campaigns around checkout operators when you go to your local supermarket, that you should go and use the person you're going to use the checkout with a person on it, so we safeguard them jobs rather than them put in the self-service checkouts. But then there's so many people who then comment and sort of say, well, I prefer using the self-service checkouts because it means I don't have to speak to anybody. I can just get on, do my thing, and get out. And so we sort of try to artificially retain the jobs for the sake of retaining the jobs, not because it's the most efficient way of doing it. And of course, then that is all also then driven down, fundamentally driven by profit, isn't it? Because if you don't have to employ people, you don't have all the hassle around it. The job just gets done. So there's an element here of how do we make sure that the population is well serviced, provided for in terms of what it needs, and how technology and by implication, the human factors around that technology best supports what we're doing, rather than almost worrying about do jobs survive, because actually jobs in themselves, do we create a whole thing around them that we have to have jobs because that's what we've been driven to believe. And one of the drivers behind this article, and we see it in a number of other news articles when they come out saying there's got potential for population decline, has got nothing to do really with whether the population decline is good, bad, or indifferent. It's about that there is a smaller population or smaller number of youngsters to provide that care, or more fundamentally to pay the taxes in order to pay the pensions of people who are now who are coming up elderly and are going to be claiming their pension, because the whole system falls over, or a whole bunch of people, ourselves included, have been living off this growing population, and therefore feeling like it's unlimited growth, unlimited expansion. We're starting to hit them boundaries. Now, this now takes us quite nicely onto if the planet is trying to self-regulate with the number of people, it clearly means we need to go to Mars. There you go. That was a link. You didn't see that coming.
No, I didn't. That was out of nowhere. No, you're right, though. I mean, that is, if we're talking about society and we're talking about sort of why society is really obsessed with this population decline, it's because people won't get their money when they retire and they gotta stay in their jobs for longer. And it's more than that. And it's easy. Well, it's not easy for me to sit here and say that because I'll be there someday, right? And but you think about it, and it just means that we have to adjust the way in which we think about the world. You're right. We don't have this unlimited fountain of young people to fund our
retirement.
Yeah, exactly. So I think really we just need to think about it from a different societal perspective, and really that's a really Western way to think about these population trends, because there are plenty of societies in which that doesn't happen, and so we need to start thinking about, like, from a global perspective, what this means, and especially the countries in which this is going to fundamentally change the way that their local, state, national governments work. It is going to be very interesting to see how policy evolves over time in those other countries. I mean, they brought up China. China has a population decline. What will the state of China look like in 20, 30 years? What policy will be in place in 20, 30 years? I'm not going to comment on any policy that is in place now or in the future. I'm just saying, how will it change? That is something that we have to think about, right? And so from a societal perspective, that is another consideration. I will say there's a larger ethical issue that's very relevant here in the States right now. Is, do you encourage population growth in some instances through policy? They've basically taken away a woman's right to choose, a person's right to choose, here in the States, in some places, and that is entirely unfair. Will that result in a population growth? In some cases, yes. And it's going to cause financial hardship and burden on those people who don't have that choice. And so, there's the question of if it's vital enough to the survival of a society, if you implement these policies that are subtle nudges for people to reproduce and sort of fill in that that gap that is coming with the population growth decline. There's a variety of ways in which you can do it that's less invasive than the way that's being done now, such as subtle benefits for having children, or support from communities or government that would help you sort of take care of those children. There's ways in which you can do it without taking away people's right to choose. Anyway, soapbox down. You wrote another point here, and I'm going to pass it over to you to talk about this point.
Yeah, because it's not the opposite of what you're talking about, but actually I've seen a large rise, and I read an article on it just yesterday, which was people's perception of what you should be doing as a couple. Should the ultimate drive be to just reproduce? And it was started off by a couple who moved into quite a large house, 4-bed house with 2.5 bathrooms. I'm still not entirely sure how you get half a bathroom. But they would talk to the neighbors, and all the neighbors had children, all this sort of stuff. And they were like, "Oh, you moved to the house, you're going to have some kids in that to fill the house up." They're like, "Well, no. We like the house. I love the space. I've got a couple of offices. We've got this, that, and the other. We're happy just as we are." And we sort of have this, and their neighbors were almost aghast. And there was a whole bunch of other examples of the same. So we seem to have this innate thing inside us that we expect all couples to reproduce. And in particular, obviously, we expect all women to want to become mothers. But actually, there's so many more people who are not wanting to do that. They're either not wanting to be a family with children; they just want to be a family, just the pair of them, or they just got no interest in reproducing. We seem to societally, and it might be just a protection mechanism within ourselves as a society. If you think of society as an organism, but actually, should we be beating down on them in the way that we are? I know it might not be the societal norm, but people want to live in the way that they want to live, and actually we just let them get on with it.
Yes, I will echo that. Just let people live their lives. Don't come in with any of this prejudice towards people who don't want to have children. That's their choice. And like my wife and I chose to have a child, maybe more. We'll see. But if we only have one, then we are contributing to that population decline, right? And are you then going to get on people who only have one child because they're not producing the status quo of people? It's a stupid argument, and I hate it, right? Like just let people live their lives. We'll figure out the problems later. Just let people live their lives the way they want to live them, right? I have friends who don't want to have kids, and it's totally fine. Just let them live their lives. It's their choice. Stay out of their choices. Anyway, that's a theme, right? Stay out of your choices. I have other points that I want to bring up about this, sort of what it means for design, and really what it means when you think about ubiquitous design. This kind of comes back to the shift in population. You have more aging population now, but over time that will shift and level out. Maybe you have to design something that's ubiquitous enough for all populations to use. And, especially considering those sort of uneven distributions of population. That's hard. That is hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something that I feel like as the population shifts, we have to maybe shift the design or have an understanding of how things will shift over time to accommodate those things. I think another example of something like this, or a prime example, I should say, of something like this is transportation. And this is, again, fairly Western industrialized society standpoint. I understand that. But if you think about transportation solutions, right now we have, here in the States, we have cars, but then we also have public transportation. And what happens to public transportation when less and less people take it because you're having less and less population shift? Do you change the way it works? Do you pull back on how often the schedules run? Is that fair to the people who need to get things on time? You think about the throughput, the bandwidth, all that stuff. And that even comes down to the ways in which we build our cities and the ways in which we build our roads for personal private transportation as well. You have to think about all of this stuff. And that is another really interesting point to me, is how do you design something for a changing population? Because right now here in the States, what we see is, the roads of the 1950s, 1960s are no longer big enough to support all the cars on the road. And so there's constant efforts. Like you drive through California, there's always a piece of the road that's in construction, trying to widen that bandwidth of cars that are able to get through, because you have this growing population. What happens when it actually gets to that sustainable point, or unsustainable point to where it declines? You now have these massive roads that are too big for what you need at that point in time. And so these are questions that I have. I don't have solutions, but these are questions that I have about how to handle this change in population distribution over time, especially as it comes to sort of these massive projects that take up a lot of space on our planet. Right. That's kind of where I'm at. That also goes with housing too. Right now, housing is a huge issue in a lot of parts of the world, and maybe someday it won't be. And what do we do with all that extra land and property, without letting it go fall by the wayside and become dilapidated huts, out in the wilderness? Like, what do you do with that? How do you maintain it in case the population does turn around and come back up again? All these are questions of how to deal with these types of large infrastructure issues with population distribution. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, there is. I mean, I don't think we're in any risk at the moment of, if we still go through this boom and then there's basically a reduction, there is still so many people who are living in abject poverty that that will take over these houses and stuff. But there is also, if you look on like social media, there's some really good examples about where cities and actually vast cities have been abandoned. They've either been developed and then for whatever reason have been abandoned, and nature has come and taken them back. There's some fascinating pictures out there about how that whole ecosystem is working. But I do think you're right. I think there is, if we're clever, which invariably means we probably won't do it, if we plan and understand what the future could look like and deal with that, then we can actually have those underpinning structures in place to be able to deal with almost like I said, the rise and decline of populations, but also the technology in place around automation, around AI, to help support the civilization. Because I think one of the things that really gives us problems at the moment is the population densities. That really we get so many people trying to live in really quite small spaces compared to there being more people could move out to the countryside if we had the right levels of connectivity. So even in the UK at the moment, if you go and live out in the countryside, your level of broadband connectivity is lower. Your ability to get postal deliveries is not as good. The ability to, if you're cut off because of weather or whatever, then you have a lower quality of life because of not having these things. But if we could provide connectivity, if you could provide all these things to a higher standard, then actually the population density problem doesn't become as big because living more remotely is accessible. The development of public transport, as you quite rightly say, as people use public transport less and less, there is less ability to put on public transport because it is not economically viable. And we are seeing really good examples of that at the moment in the UK as well, because people don't use the public transport as much because so take railways. If you wanted to go and take a long journey, it's going to cost you a couple £100. Whereas the same journey by car will cost you maybe around £30. And so the cost benefit in that, and that's assuming that you're traveling on your own. As soon as you have two people, then having your own private transport makes way more economic sense and timing sense, and all that sort of stuff. So we need to have better public transport systems in place, so then people would use them. But it's going to take a forward-looking view in order to what it could be, and basically investing in that. And we're going to need that throughout technologies. So we're going to need really good investment to make it work, to be future-proof, and not just trying to catch up with where it should be. The last bit I want to dive into is climate, and because if we've got the declining population, obviously we sort of say that climate change is human driven, which I think we all largely accept. Hence why we drove the idea of climate ergonomics and things like that. If we've got this problem to solve, but yet we've got less people to solve it, does that mean that the declining population means that the problem of human accelerated climate change will go away? I'm not sure it will. I think there's just then less people to solve it.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for you. It'll be interesting to
neither.
see how things do change. Yeah,
Mm.
over time. I just don't know. I don't think any of us know.
No. It's but again, so it's going to be something we'd have to try and model. We're going to have to try and understand. We're going to have to try and work out how we're going to deal with it. Yeah, and there's some really big. There's none of these simple design issues from a human factors perspective here. These are really big human factors issues that we're going to have to try and deal with.
Yeah. Well, in true Human Factors Cast fashion, we've opened a can of worms that we don't intend to pack back up. You have any other closing thoughts on this one, Barry, before we move on?
I think fundamentally, I think it's a really interesting topic. I think it's something that we have to have at the forefront of somebody's mind, not necessarily mine, to be able to try and solve, because we can't just population decline. Whilst I don't think it's necessarily the problem that people think it is. If we walk into it with our eyes closed, then we are storing up problems for later on.
Yeah, I agree. We got to think about this stuff now, people. All right. Thank you to our patrons this week for selecting our topic, and thank you to our friends over at Futurism for our news story this week. If you want to follow along, we do post the links to all the original articles on our weekly roundups and our blog. You can also join us on our Discord for more discussion on these stories and more. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to see what's going on in the Human Factors community right after this.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our weekly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and Human Factors Minute, a Patreon-only weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you, and remember, it depends.
Yes, huge thank you as always to our patrons. We especially want to thank our honorary Human Factors Cast staff patron, Michelle Tripp. Patrons like you truly keep the lights on over here and at the lab. We really couldn't do this without you, so thank you all so much. Hey, did you know that we have a show sponsor tier where if you want to sponsor the show, get your message heard by thousands of human factors, psychology, and design professionals, you can do that. We'll sell out and read a little 150 words for you every week if you support us on Patreon at this tier. And you know what? You'll be featured on our homepage for the duration of your pledge. So that's kind of nice. You also get a permanent link on our page to any sponsored content that you want to do. So, like, I don't know if you're a company that's looking to hire human factors professionals or psychology folks or anything like that. Someone who's selling ergonomic gear, you want to do all that. You can help support the show. We really want to make sure that the people who support the show actually make sense from that perspective. It's not going to be like one of these things where we're just going to let anybody in. You got to be at least somewhat related to the field. Anyway, if you're interested in that, go check it out. It's an option, and it would really help us out even more. It, like, you talk about keeping the lights on. This would keep us on for quite some time, I think. This tier. Anyway, if you're considering it, go check us out on Patreon. And with that, I think it's time we get into this next part of the show.
It came from.
That's right, switching gears and getting to It Came From. This is the part of the show where we search all over the internet to bring you topics that the human factors, psychology, engineering community is talking about. If you find any of these answers useful, give us a like to help other people find this content. We got 3 tonight. This first one here is by Metric090 on the user experience subreddit. They write, should I follow UX guides or my own ideas for UX projects? I'm working alone on a project for my UX portfolio, and I feel a little lost. I've been trying to follow UX guides and steps on what to do next, but I don't feel like I'm getting any closer to my goal. What the guides want me to do doesn't seem to line up well with ending up with a good final product. I do intend to follow good UX practices, but should I just do what I think is best path to finishing the project, or should I follow guides because the people who made them knew what they were talking about? Barry, what is your opinion on this?
A guide is a guide, not an instruction manual. Fundamentally, right, I'm going to hit the "it depends" button because you're doing this for your UX portfolio and not necessarily for an end client. And so it depends what you're trying to showcase. But fundamentally, if this was me doing this for in the day job, I would be strongly tempted to you follow your own nose. And I guess I'm saying that with a couple of years experience under my belt, but you use your own development process. You know where you want to get to, so develop the plan on how you want to get there, and then use the guides to help you along the way. But as I said, the guides aren't a process manual. They're not an instruction, a definitive instruction book, because the UX guides don't, or any guides really, don't necessarily have exactly what you're trying to do in mind. They're a general guide. So when they're useful, use them. If they're not useful, then they're not helping you get towards your end goal, don't use them. You follow your nose and get there, but don't. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're right. You do have to do a bit of reflection as to why are the guides not working, because it's like if you step out of any process, as long as you're justified and you've done the right sort of analysis to say, right, why am I stepping out of process? Document it. Understand why you're doing it. As long as you're doing that, then actually you're fine, because you might get to the other side of what this chasm is, and you're like, actually, now I understand that better. I could actually go and implement something. That's fine. But fundamentally, I think my message is a guide is a guide. It's not an instruction manual. Use them when they work, and don't use them if they don't. Nick, what about you?
You took my answer. You took my answer, Barry. I think that's absolutely right. And it's very prolific what you just said, because it was what I was going to say too. No, I think there's a couple key things that I want to highlight here. Is that yes, you should absolutely look at it when it makes sense to. But the thing for me is that in this role, we should really be focused on understanding when to use what. And so I strongly feel that in sort of a research role, that is what you should be doing, is understanding when to use what method to get the thing out of the study or the research that you want to get out of it is going to make the most sense. And if you do need a guide to figure out how to do those methods, that's fine. There's plenty of good best practices on how to perform those methods, but matching the methodology to the to the research task, or sort of the hypothesis that you want to either confirm or disprove, then I think you should know roughly what's going to get you there. If you don't, I'm sure there's a guide for it, but again, it will tell you, sort of a rough approximation of how to get there, not necessarily the steps that you need to get there. And it's all about adaptation. You see these guides, you adapt them to your needs. That is a critical skill in which you need to be successful, I think, in this role. That's just my 2 cents. Any other last thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I guess one more just on the use of, not just UX guides, but methods in general. Don't feel you have to use them just because everybody else is, because their use cases are different anyway. Otherwise, you're not doing a unique project. But just because everybody else is using a method doesn't make it good. Actually, I've been in a case where I've used a very popular method, but then when you look at the research into it, and I didn't quite get the answer I wanted, and then when you look deeper into it, I think everybody else has done the same thing. They've used it, not got quite what they wanted, and gone, oh, actually the method wasn't that good. But because everyone else was using it in their thing, then it almost gets a false life. So just be critical about what it is that you're using and why.
You got to spill the deets on that method in the post show.
Maybe. Yeah.
All right.
Probably good with a certain amount of framing.
Okay. All right. Yeah. It'll come with a lot of framing. All right. This next one here is by Greenstain761 on the Human Factor subreddit. We always love it when we get ones from the Human Factor subreddit. This is a series of questions with a statement as the post. It's all about who you know, not what you know. And the series of questions is: GPA doesn't matter and won't give you an advantage when trying to get hired. minor in human factors and major in something else, you're more likely to get human factors role than someone with degree in human factors. Is that a fact? Skills don't transfer well to other job roles. If everyone can transition to human factors from a, quote, similar field, why can't human factors personnel transition to the fields that it's comprised of? So this is a statement that I'm going to ask you if you agree or disagree with. Is it all about who you know and not what you know?
Well, it depends, doesn't it? I think I've always sort of said that, certainly in the UK, I think that, and I think it's fairly true, that human factors is a small domain, and you are within largely one degree of freedom. You might not know specific individuals, but you almost always know a common individual. So, and that is almost a vetting process in of itself. That actually, if you don't know anybody common at all, then that's almost, certainly for me, it's almost a bit of a flag. Maybe not if you're a brand new, say, graduate into the role, but if you've been around for a while and we don't know anybody in the same, or say in the same spheres, then that acts as a bit of a flag to me. But equally, if you've been mentored and stuff like that, so but that doesn't necessarily give you an advantage in being more capable. I find capable people do tend to rise to the top. So it's a mixture.
Yeah. Here, let me help break this down. It's an advantage if you know people. It is a massive advantage, although I don't think it's necessarily not what you know, because I think that is a huge part of it. Here's the thing. I wouldn't stick my neck out for you if I knew that you couldn't do the job, at least in some capacity.
Exactly. Right.
We talked about this a couple weeks ago with somebody who was like annoyed that their boss was hiring, all these people that were their friends. And yeah, I would be too if they couldn't perform the job. And that's where I'm saying, like, if I know someone is in a sort of tangential field but can do research methods or understands the domain enough to try to apply it and is competent and capable, then why would I not hire them if I'm familiar with their work? So yes, it's a huge advantage, but I think there is a lot of that domain knowledge that you need to know in order to get halfway there, if that makes sense. So people aren't just going to stick out their neck for you willy-nilly in a lot of cases because their reputation's on the line as well.
Yeah, just to jump in on that, because the opposite is true as well, isn't it? If you're not very good, this is a small domain, and like I say, if people ask for a reference, well, you don't want to be seen to be giving out bad references. And we don't want to see the our discipline suffer for having people who can't do the job. So yes, if you're not very good at what you're doing, or you're trying to make claims that you can't stack up to, then yeah, it is. We do know each other, and people do talk. So
yeah, much like fertility rates and mortality rates, there is an interaction between skill and who you know. I'll leave it at that.
I so wondered where you were going there.
Tying it back to the story. All right, we got one more here. This is from the user experience subreddit. Metric090 writes, is it okay to assume certain aspects about a user based on other aspects? Break it down a little bit more for you. Is it okay to take into account other studies that have been done on groups of people to make assumptions about those groups? For example, is it okay to assume that younger people are not willing to wait as long as older people? Barry, what are your thoughts on this? Can you make assumptions based on other things about a user group?
I'm going to say yes, mainly because in my domain, my experience, the ability to get hold of an entire cohort of people, particularly in the defense world, particularly in the such critical world, is almost few and far between. It's hard to get the full range of people that you want to engage with. So in many ways, you end up making assumptions, and as long as you can justify those assumptions and document them, then generally it's okay to allow you to fulfill that data. Whether the the only caveat I would put around that is making sure it's around secondary data, almost not the primary primary investigation. So you can't, if you're doing an investigation, you can't just then go nick somebody else's data to do your primary answer. But if you're trying to fill out the background of why people do things, then yeah, learn from other people. That's why them studies have been done.
Yeah, I agree. I think this not the purpose of a persona?
Exactly.
Because you are forming assumptions based on a subset of users that you are then using to make assumptions about a wider set of users that fit that profile. And you can certainly go off and look at some anthropometrical data. You can also look at sort of societal sociology studies on certain groups of people that you can make assumptions on, and psychology as well. A lot of times in these scientific articles, they define their population that they're looking at, and especially as it relates to generalizability, right? And so you have to take that into account as you read studies on these certain populations that are being researched. It's not going to be applicable to the general population unless it is one of those studies. But for groups of people, yes, pay attention to how they define the generalizability and what populations they're talking about. Are they saying this applies to college students because that's who they sampled? A lot of times that's what you'll find, right? Is it generalizable to the larger public? Maybe. Is it certain socioeconomical status, those types of things? Yes, you can absolutely make assumptions of groups of people, not individuals. Make sure that is clear. Groups of people, because once you start sort of making assumptions about individuals, that is then prejudice. So take that, and shove it. Anyway, well, let's just get into the. I don't know. I don't have a good. I'm feisty today. I don't have a good ending to that. Let's just get into this last part of the show. One more thing, Barry. What's your one more thing this week?
I'm excited this week because coming up on the 29th of August, NASA is launching their Artemis rocket, and just how cool is that? That's basically like the first major step for NASA to be able to then, looking to set things up on the moon and then going to Mars and things like that. So I just think it's really, really exciting time. There's also a very slightly selfish reason that we, about 18 months ago, we interviewed people from the Orion project on NASA, which is obviously part of the overall Artemis thing. So it's just really, really exciting to see that they're going to have an uncrewed mission, launch on the 29th, and as long as that window doesn't shift, I'm going to be glued to the TV watching that because I think it's going to be brilliant.
Oh, I was hoping you'd say I'm going to watch it live, because that would be
that would be something else. Seeing some of the photos coming out, people are going to take photos of it because it's all they've done the 10-hour transition to launch pad, and it's all set up. It just looks really, there is a difference, I think, and I don't know why, between when NASA puts up a rocket and then when like SpaceX and the other ones have put up rockets. We sort of, I don't know why, but we expect the SpaceX ones to do well now. That's kind of it's done thing. But when NASA is sort of rolling something out, it kind of looks a bit old school, but it looks like it's going to do something like really good. So yeah, it's just going to be wicked.
Well, my one more thing this week, I have two here, but I'm only going to talk about one because one will likely have more results after next week. We'll see. The one I'm going to talk about here is that there's some erratic velocity in the pacing of my work lately, and it's been really interesting to observe because it's been fast, and now it's slow. And you'll find this is typical for a lot of folks, is that you'll have some downtime followed by some like really frantic work, followed by some more downtime. And it's just, I wanted to comment on sort of that erratic pace. I think it's just interesting because it's nice when you actually get a breather. And like I had some time to make the show notes today, and I hope the show, I hope it showed. But anyway, that's it for today, everyone. If you like this episode and enjoy some of the discussion about human factors issues around, let's say, certain aging subpopulations, I'll encourage you to go listen to episode 251, Grandma, Relax. It's Just a Robot. It's where we talk about robots in aging population homes. Comment wherever you're listening with what you think of the story this week. For more in-depth discussion, you can always join us on our Discord community. Visit our official website, sign up for our newsletter, stay up to date with all the latest human factors news. If you like what you hear, you want to support the show, become a show sponsor. Just kidding. You can always leave us a 5-star review. That is free for you to do right now. Go do that. Tell your friends about us. That is also free for you to do and really helps us grow. If you want to and have the financial means to, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Like I said, that really does go forward to making sure that the lights are turned on over here at the show and at the lab. As always, links to all of our socials and our website are in the description of this episode. Mr. Barry Kirby, thank you for being on the show today. Where can our listeners go find you if they want to talk about baby making?
When you read for a bit for the first time, great. You can find me on Twitter. I know the socials are Baz_K. Or come listen to some of our interviews at 1202 on the 1202 Human Factors podcast, which is 1202podcast.com.
I forgot I wrote that. As for me, I meant to change it. I've been your host, Nick Roome. You can find me on our Discord and across social media at Nick_Roome. What an ending. Thanks again for tuning into Human Factors Cast. Until next time, it depends. Oh, man. Baby making.
Oh, that was good. That was an energetic end to the podcast.
Oh, man. All right. Hey, we're in the post show. I think we need to change the music, yeah?
Oh, yeah, we meant to be coming down now. So.
Yeah, let's do some coming down music. Let's just check out some of the ones that we haven't yet. So this is hip hop. There's two that we haven't checked out. It's lounge and down tempo. Let's check out lounge.
Okay. Oh, I like that.
Yeah, this is all right.
It's all right.
Yeah. Oh man. Baby making. Oh boy. That's gonna be fun.
The whole thing was quite interesting because we didn't actually get into the human factors of all this quite a lot. We just they blasted policy.
Hey, human factors is policy.
It's true. Yes, I think it's quite because actually I don't think 5 or 10 years ago we'd have identified this type of thing as a true human factors issue. I think it's the human factors world or the human factors community has evolved, certainly in the past 5 years more so, to actually take on these bigger issues. Because we realize it's important.
It is important. Yeah, I think there's like, I forget where I first heard it, but there's like the 5 Ps.
5 Ps?
Not those. But let's see here. It's like and so it's like policy, procedure, process, products, and I forget the 5th one. It's like 5 Ps.
Okay.
But they're all things in which human factors impacts, right? Human factors impacts policy. Human factors impacts procedure. I think procedure and protocol are used interchangeably, so it could be either one of those. And then you have human factors impacts the products. Human factors impacts the process, which again is like procedure, but is different because procedure is more tailored towards a specific thing, where process is maybe a longer thing for how, A to B, or A to Z, where procedure is maybe B to C. And I forget what the 5th one is. I don't. People, maybe.
I don't think it is, but it would make sense if it was.
It would certainly make sense. I forget. I forget where I heard about it.
You just can't get the stuff now, I tell you.
What's that?
You just can't get the stuff now, can you?
So, and maybe it derives from marketing's 5 Ps, which is product, price, promotion, place, and people.
Wow, that was quick. Yeah,
and I think that's what they were going for.
So,
free flights.
Yeah,
no, definitely not that one.
What has been? So I'm trying to do some other stuff at the moment around. I think I mentioned before about learning around the healthcare domain and stuff. Because that's not
patience.
My baby. Oh, that's true. Well, is that patients as in people or patients as
in
patients?
Patients as in like healthcare patients. I just brought it up because you said healthcare.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
I'm going to throw out P's. I'm going to throw out P's through the rest of this conversation.
You're taking the P. See what I did there. I'm still stunned at the fact that the healthcare domain, the healthcare industry,
perplexed.
Definitely that. Just don't take into account human factors. Oh, it's so disparate so desperately managed. It's unreal. So I've set myself a little challenge, a little task, and I'm going to try and turn it into a paper. I don't know quite how to do it, but anyway, whenever I see something on Twitter, because my Twitter algorithm has evolved, so I'm seeing more and more medical people talking around these sort of issues and stuff. Whenever somebody comes up with something that is blatantly a human factors issue, I'm screenshotting it. And the idea is that I'm going to compile them all, say maybe in 6 months' time, and then do thematic analysis on it, and then an outcome. It just reminded me of something. I've got something exciting to tell you. I'll do that after this. To do a thematic analysis and then look at what the human factors issues and solutions are. Because there just seems to be so many things, everything from bottle labeling all the way through to how does a patient actually get through the front door. There's so many like low-hanging fruit that could make everybody's life so much easier, that just we were all like concerned about how we're going to apply AI to surgeons and things like that. We're just not hitting the basics there. And I'm just seeing it more and more and more. It just seems to be getting referenced. So I just thought I'd share that because it's frustrating me.
Good for you. Is that like a passion project? You're not doing that for any.
No. It's just because I think it could be fun. It's interesting. I'm sort of picking up more. I'm reading a lot more into the healthcare domain, because of some of the interviews we've done, some of the discussions we've had, and it's just interesting. So it's what I do for fun. It's what I do in my own time. But interesting announcement. We did a show a while ago on Google and whether the AI had actually become live or not. I think I briefly mentioned this to you. I got asked if we wanted to do an article, but we had a week to turn around this article. So I took some notes together and worked with Dr. Mark Sajan on the lead of the AI and digital in healthcare special interest group, which I'm part of. And so I threw some notes together, basically saying that we discussed it, me and you discussed it. These are sort of the basic points that we brought out. We thought this, we thought that. Through that at Mark thinking we'd go through some revisions and this, that, and the other. Turns out that we didn't have time to do any of that. Threw it straight to thing, and I got a notification yesterday that it's going out in this month's edition of The Ergonomist. So you and me and Human Factors Cast get a mention in this month's or this edition of the Ergonomics magazine.
Dude, hang on! I have to update our press page. When does that come out?
That's a good question. I've got no idea. I shall find out. But I think I've got, which I shall send to you, a PDF version of the article.
I would love a hard copy. Do they send it to the States?
I could probably get a spare copy and send it to you.
That'd be awesome. I'd love that.
I know people. But yes, no,
we can.
It was just a way that we could get it together really quickly. And I was like, oh, they're publishing it. I thought we spell check it first.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun because we can. I don't know, like we can in this trailer that we inevitably have to put together for the show at some point. We can say, mentioned in The Ergonomist, and
yes, it's true. What's the HFES equivalent of the
Ergonomics and Design? I think is their
And has Human Factors Cast had a mention in that magazine?
Not in that magazine. We've had mention in the bulletin that HFES has put out. We've been mentioned there several times. And we're featured on their website, which is kind of nice. Hint, hint.
I don't know what you mean.
Oh, okay. All right. I mean, it would be nice for the Chartered Institute to have a sort of resources list of potential audio format.
No, we do. We have
to consume.
Yeah, no, we have a list of all the best podcasts. There's just one podcast on there. It's fine.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe there should be a couple more on there.
Actually, that's not a bad idea at all. Like, I can funny when you use some people who might be doing such a thing.
Oh,
Um,
this
Another-
really quick.
behind
This
the
music is this music is kind of sounding like
It's quite soporific.
yeah. I was about to say like 90s soap opera.
Yes, that's true.
I feel like we should change it. Hang on, I'm gonna change it to the one thing that we haven't done yet. Down tempo. All right, that's not bad.
Feels like there's going to be something else coming along, but actually, it does, because it does. So I'm just looking at the CIHF website. It does have like list of publications. So I'm looking in the Learn section. So it's got research, The Ergonomist, Think, because they do have a weekly. No, is it weekly? Monthly newsletter, I think, which comes out. Maybe there could be something around. I wonder whether we could get in the monthly Think a summary of the episodes that we put, because this is all, because Think is all about news from across the discipline, and this is what this podcast does. So maybe there's a crashing together of things there.
Well, I wonder. So what is that? Is that the Ergonomist or is that the
No,
is that
so
the
it's not.
bulletin?
It's a
Newsletter.
it's like a monthly newsletter.
Well, I'll tell you what. We do post a monthly roundup of all the news stories on our blog.
True.
So yeah, that's one option.
We could. Yes. No. I shall think on that and talk to. I'll get my people to talk to. Well, me really, and see where that takes us. Because there's another bit that the CIHF do, because it's a member benefit, so it is behind a paywall. But they have a communities group where I have pushed.
Yeah, I've
podcast.
been meaning to do that for the HFES side of things, and I think what I'll do is I'll likely do it after HFES this year. It's something that I've been meaning to do for a while. It's just like I need to build it into the process, because when I go and post the like monthly recap, it's something that I post on Reddit and our socials, but I don't post it there, and I really should. It's one of those things where I'm like, I know I should do this. It would get us a lot of exposure, but I'm also kind of nervous about people like poo-pooing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. It's
Although I know, like the weird thing is that I know I'd have support of leadership, and they've actually encouraged me to do it before. So like,
well, at the end of the day, I mean, I've got no problem with, because it's happened before with some of my stuff. People have raised, "Oh, I heard you say this. I don't think that was right." I don't mind them sort of discussions, as long as it backs up into a discussion, and
Right.
not just an attack. Now, in the grand scheme of things, I think we work in a community where the chances of somebody attacking you is low. However, which has always made me nervous about doing almost the public-facing stuff, or at least when I first started, was people who were not part of the community, who were looking outside and looking in. Because I've seen people with, let's say, rather strong opinions, not believing in like sort of human factors and stuff. And I've seen
Right.
seen some of that recently as well. Again, I'll tip my hat back to some of the healthcare stuff I've been looking into and trying to promote different bits. I've had some people slide into my DMs with less than useful comments, shall we say.
Yeah.
So I swiftly kicked them back out of my DMs. So something I'd sort of, in many ways, because I've sort of not been involved in politics as much as I have been over the past couple of years, I'd almost forgotten just how vitriolic some people can be.
Yeah.
But, like,
Hey, when does that sorry to circle back to this. When does that issue of the Ergonomist come out?
Hold on a sec. I'm going to have to fire up the Outlook. It might be next month. September. Yeah, I think it's September's edition because we've quarterly. Oh, it might be out now. It might surely. I think it's gone. I think it's gone into print now. So yeah, it'll be in the next few weeks.
Ooh. So for a September release.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And we should get it fairly soon.
The Ergonomist is publicly available, or is that behind a paywall?
It's a members magazine, so it'll be behind a paywall.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because we don't riff-raff and just general people to get a hold of
Right.
it. They might learn about what we're doing, and that'd just be rude.
Yeah. So it'd be what the Ergonomist 589. Oh, someone's upset they can't get in here.
Yeah, so it's. In fact, I've just got the article here now, so it's going to go into September.
Yeah.
So
let's see. The Ergonomist 589 September 2022. Yeah, I need to. Yeah, I will. Wait, let's see. Members only. What is this? What happens if you click on one? Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. I feel like I already know the link if it follows the same. Let's see here.
Well, it won't be there yet because it won't.
I know. I'm just getting the link in place. If it follows the same schema, I should be able to, just throw it in there and then update it whenever. Let's see, September. Got a new Hot Wheels that he wants to show me.
Cool. Yes, I've got it in front. So, Barry Kirby and Nick Roome on Human Factors Cast had initial discussion structured around the 5 main areas of human factors integration: personnel training, HFE, blah, blah, blah. And the CHF had a special interest group, The fundamental question is what would you use it for? Let's talk about training. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It's a double-page spread.
Wow, 2 pages?
Yeah.
Dang.
But,
Look at that.
In fact, now that I've found it, I should just be able to forward it to you.
Oh, yeah. That'd be awesome. Which email are you sending it to? Personal or pod?
It's on its way.
Okay. I'm looking for it. Because, then I can just, throw in a little bit more detail around this and then... Yeah, that's insane. That's such a pleasant surprise. Thank you for that. That's why'd you wait till the post show for that?
Because to be honest, with everything else that had gone on, I completely forgotten about it, and I meant to mention it to you last week, and completely. It wasn't until I got to bed, and I was like, oh. And then I was like, it's okay. I'll put it into Discord in the morning, and then completely forgot again. And it wasn't marked in my thing of things to say. So anyway,
yeah. Let's see here.
Is it arrived?
Yes, it has.
Oh, good.
Let's see here. There it is. Yeah. Barry Kirby and Nick Roome on Human Factors Cast had an initial discussion structured on the phone. Yeah, there it is.
Is that cool? Oh, because I've had another kind of thought for advertising, actually. Oh, we could do that. Okay, I need to do it. Because also in the Ergonomist, I have a full page advert for K-Sharp and stuff, but I split it into thirds. And so my bottom third is an advert for the podcast.
Mhm.
And so what I was going to do was potentially split my bottom third into half and put 1202 on there, but also put Human Factors Cast on there if you'd be agreeable to that.
I would certainly be agreeable to that.
Cool. We shall see what we can do. Because that'll go for the December issue, I think. I'm in a slightly weird situation where I want to keep on pushing it, keep on doing the advert because I think it's quite cool. People see it, all that sort of jazz. But then because I'm president,
Conflict of interest, yeah.
Is that just weird?
I mean, as long as you're paying for it, right? Like that's.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's not a massive drama. And it gives me more vested interest to make sure that it's a good magazine.
Look, so how about this? What if you put a disclaimer on it, like, hey, this advertisement was not paid for with Chartered Institute funds. This was paid for by K-Sharp, or it was paid for by you, right? Like just some way to indicate that it's not a.
But then it'd almost be weird for it to, given that because I've an advert in there for the past couple of years. It'd almost be weird for it not to be there,
right?
Because I was quite surprised. I almost didn't think that it did anything. It was almost like a vanity project. Being able to see my name in the Ergonomist, how cool is that?
Oh yeah, no, I feel that.
But then, but actually, quite a few people see that it almost makes me look like a proper company by having an advert in there. And I was like, okay, I think that's a compliment. But,
I mean, yeah, I mean you can certainly say like mentioned in the Ergonomist, right? Like K-Sharp mentioned in the Ergonomist, right? That's something you could say. Like I've been collecting a variety of like not sound bites, but reviews or things that people say about the podcast, and some of them have been like Human Factors Cast has become a pillar of the Human Factors community. Fiercely independent. What's the other one? Now I can say mentioned in the Ergonomist, featured at HFES. We can say a bunch of those things about the podcast, and I'm keeping like a running record of those because it's fun to do.
No, it is, and it's the little things like that actually make a big difference when you need them. So we're doing a whole bunch of stuff within the company, and you sort of sitting there going, if only we had these ads. So I'm now trying to push the team almost at any given moment, take a photo. What we're doing, you're running a workshop, take a photo. Have you finished the workshop, take a photo. You're halfway through the workshop, take a photo. Is there something funny happening in the workshop, take a photo. Take a bit of video. Is nothing happening? Well, in that case, take a bit of video. Just so you've got artifacts to use. Because it's so easy to forget that sort of stuff. And then when you come to, like we're doing at the moment, we're trying to create a brochure. You haven't got the artifacts to be able to put in there. So then as what we're doing at the moment, we're producing a brochure, and not only producing a brochure in English, but we're also producing it in Welsh. So it's going to be a bilingual brochure in a language I don't quite understand yet.
So like some of the other things I have for written about us. I wish I had known about this podcast before I started my Human Factors and Ergonomics graduate program. Loving this podcast. Avid listener for years. Great listener experience. A must listen for everyone.
So you want to keep the good ones then? Or do you keep the amusing
Yeah,
ones?
I don't keep the ones that say win a voucher to spend, get $500 from us for ad on your website, or like if you want to listen to a couple sophomore boring bros drone on, this is for you.
Sounds accurate. That's fair.
Titles are not user friendly. That one cracks me up. Ooh. Oh boy.
Ooh. Wow, with 5 months to go, it's all going squirrely.
Oh really? Okay.
This is where the music really helps, as you can tell just by the music going faster or slower, or just stopping completely. That there's a problem.
Oh well, you know what? I mean, we made it. We made it.
We did.
We did it.
But we nearly didn't start, but we made it.
It's interesting. This must be a new thing on Podpage. You can put in reviews that you got on other platforms, as long as you provide the link to that platform's URL to the review, right? So like, it only imports it. Yeah, it imports it from Apple and Podcatcher, I think, but it allows you to get them from other platforms. So if I'm like looking on what is it? Podcast Addict or something, right? I can look at reviews. In fact, I haven't looked at that lately.
Talking
PA
about
user.
Podcast host in the past. Blueberry sent an interesting update last week. They're doing an integration with Descript, which I need to read into exactly what it means, but it looks like there's an interesting collaboration there.
Sorry, on what?
Oh, with Descript.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Doing a collaboration there, and I need to dig into what it actually means. Oh, the other thing they're also doing is paid advertising. A paid advertising integration for every platform. And so I'm in two minds about whether to give that a go or not, because if the adverts are too long or too intrusive, then
that's how I feel, and that's like I've always tried to keep this show ad free, and that's why it's we're technically calling it a show sponsor and not like a advertiser, right? They are literally sponsoring the show, and it'd only be theoretically, hopefully, someone in the human factors field to where I feel like it would be a useful thing.
Yeah,
right. We wouldn't want to advertise anything that's like, I don't know.
It would be interesting to see
Audible.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if it worked, because they were saying they would only put it in at the start at the end, and so if they did that, how would that affect the listening experience?
See, so that's pre-roll, post-roll. I have a what's interesting is I have on the service that we use now, Captivate, it allows me to do that pre-post and in the middle. So and it allows you to do it batch. So like, let's say I've established a point in the middle, which would be the Patreon commercial, that we go in and replace across all of our episodes. So no matter when people are listening, they listen to it 5 months down the line, the current advertisement's going to be in there. And that's something really powerful that we can offer to show sponsors.
Cool. Yeah.
So that way it's like, you're listening episode 1 and you're still getting the advertisements for,
the current. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So that's, another sort of powerful piece that we can leverage. Anyway, we're just about done. Any other closing thoughts, Barry, before we pontificate our powerless posse away from this pointed?
No, I need to do not a pee. I just need to find my bed, I think, because it'd be midnight.
Okay.
It's been a long day.
Well, I need to pee.
That's true.
I've had a lot of water. So anyway, with that, We'll see y'all next week. And
shall
thank
see you next week.
for sticking around.
Have a good one.
Goodbye.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast Network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our weekly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and Human Factors Minute, a Patreon-only weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you.